So gosh amount of energy, all my stomach fat, all of it. There's none. And it's so cool because like for years and years on end, I've been like struggling with this like stomach fat. And so today I'm like doing exercise and I look at it or something and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's gone. It's gone. Like I can wear a dress for Christmas now. Y'all, this is amazing. So I just want to bring that up, that like all things are possible with God. So we are brought to the last Sunday of Pentecost. It's the last Sunday before Advent begins. So I felt like, oh my gosh, somebody keeps texting me. I hope you can't hear it. So I felt like what we should do today is just kind of broaden our horizons and try to see like where this Christmas is going to take us, where it's going to mentally take us. And so I felt like we should just talk about Christmas really, or like just like Advent. So for those of you who don't know what Advent is, it is a waiting season for Jesus at Christmas. So it's like sort of like Lent is for Easter, Advent is for Christmas. So I was thinking we could like just kind of reminisce and think of like what happened around Jesus's time at this time of the year and just kind of go from there. So I would say in the months of Advent, there are 4 separate weeks of Advent, and 3 of them are the purple candle and so it goes purple candle, pink candle, purple candle. And the pink one is kind of like joyful, and it's for the fact that like we not celebrate the Christmas that's here, but we take a break from all of the fasting or doing things that we did, and then get ready for Christmas with the other purple candle that go on the wreath. So so I don't know how to start this, so I'm just gonna kind of swing it. That being said, so in the weeks of Advent, so the first week of Advent, we just kind of step into the Christmas cycle, and we just, a Christmas season, but it's not Christmas yet. So we're just kind of going into it, and we just realize that, our Lord is coming, and he brings that peace, that solid peace with him, and the joy and the grace and the hope and the brightness of the world. And he just brings so much joy. And so we just kind of meditate on that a little bit, and we realize that so like he's coming, and with all of him, all of this joy and everything. And we just need to take a step back, and I'm saying next week, or you can take a step back now if you want, but like realize that this King, this Lord of Lords is coming to us, and we have to get ready for it, because if we don't, then we're not going to have a very good Christmas. So I would encourage you. So like, I don't know how often I do these videos, but like when we're in the Advent season, which starts next Sunday, I would encourage you to like do something for God that's a little like not hard. It doesn't have to be hard, but like something that like makes you feel like, you're doing something extra for him every single day in the season of Advent. I bet you will have a very great Christmas if you do. Just try to like maybe say an extra prayer, talk to God for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever. Just try to use that time to, say that we're ready for you, Jesus, because I will tell you exactly what Jesus wants for Christmas. He wants your heart. He wants your heart, and he is just in love with you madly. So this is how we can do that. So yeah, I wanted to begin my talk today. I'm sorry, spin all over the place today, but I wanted to begin my talk with God. And I just want to say that I am so thankful for everything God has bestowed upon me. So not only have I lost my stomach fat, I've lost the sense in a way of like fear. Like that being said, I'm talking about like God has filled me with so much hope and love and inspiration like lately that it's just overwhelming, and it's just great. And I know where it's from. It's from God, but it's from when I experienced God in church. Ever since then, I've had like this like steady confidence that I didn't have before. And I can just say that I love God, and I feel like it's all from him. every single bit of it is from him. So if you are lacking confidence, if you are fretting, if you're worried, if you are fearful, if you are anxious, if you are all those things, insecure, whatever, please know that, first of all, you're not alone. Like, I know it sounds weird because we shouldn't be like that or whatever, but like, you're not alone. There are people in this world that are like suicidal. And I'm not saying it's okay to be suicidal. It really isn't. And if you're suicidal watching this, please know, don't take your life. But like, you've got to realize that people out there love you. And I don't know, like growing up in a kind of turmoil house kind of like taught me that love, like people didn't love that much. I'm not cutting down where I lived, but it just happened to be that way. So like people love you, God loves you. And what you should really like think about above all is that God is so in love with you that he died for you. And I've heard this somewhere, and I'm pretty sure it's true, that Jesus did not need to die for you, that he was God and he could just click his hands and like everything, the gates would open and everything in heaven. But he chose to die because he wanted to show how bad sin was, and he wanted to show how much he loved us, like how much effort he went through to show us that he loved us. Die on a cross. Okay, so maybe we should talk about that a little bit, because Jesus was born to die. So when Jesus went through his passion, he was about my age. He was 33, and they say that's the peak of your life, like the top where everything's just nifty. I don't know if that's the word, but anyway, he went through very intense pains, and the only reason I can like share with you this stuff is because I've been through it, but he got it worse, way worse, which is crazy, and I love him for it. But so when Jesus, before he God at the beginning of the world, before the beginning of the world, or whatever you call it, because it was like out of time, knew that he would die on the cross. And Jesus did. He died on the cross. And before that, though, like, I guess we could start with like the agony in the garden. So he's like in this agony, bitter agony in the garden. Now, I've seen pictures of where he actually was, like the trees of it, and it kind of looks like these trees at my house. But he was in bitter agony, and he was actually, you know how when you're really upset about something, you'll like start not sweating, but like kind of sweating? He was sweating blood. Why? Because there was just so much on his mind. Because being God, he could see the future. He could see everything that was going to happen to him. He could see, you know, thank God I can tell you guys about this, because I don't think I could have. Like today, like I felt like God was telling me, like, just go on and talk and I'll do the rest, or I'll be behind it, because he is before us and behind us and all that. So he went through his passion with love. It's almost like he was smiling the whole time, but it was probably hard sometimes because he fell. Like, it's just, there are so many things I could talk about this. But we could start the agony in the garden. So he goes into this garden of olives, just feeling bleak. Imagine knowing, nowadays it would be like, you know, people aren't going to come in horses and stuff. And nowadays it would be like, somebody's going to come in like, a cop car. Yeah. And take you to jail, and you're going to die after you're killed near that jail or whatever. Imagine you hear the cop car coming and you know that's what's going to happen. That's kind of how this was. Like, he knew the multitudes and them were coming, yet he chose to pray. What's interesting is he asked the Father to take away the chalice, which is like his chalice is like drink the blood of drink the chalice is to drink the cup, like do God's will. But he asked God, he was like, God the Father, like, I do not want to do this, but if you really want me to do this, that will be done. He even says, take the chalice away from me, because who would want to go through that, right? Like, no. And so, of course, we know the Father wanted him to do it, and he said that will be done. Now he comes out, the disciples kept falling asleep, And he's telling them, like, watch and pray because, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak, which that's something I want to share too, that the flesh is totally weak without God. So if you're like wondering why you're weak, just be like, God help me. You know what I mean? It makes you thankful for it. So I forget what I was saying. Oh, so he's in the garden, thank God. And, he hears Judas and them coming, and it's really interesting his perspective, or like what he says. But he says to them, rise, let us go. Behold, he is at hand that will betray me. And then Judas comes and he kisses him and he says, Hail, Rabbi. And Jesus is like, what's going on? And then they take him away. Now, he's arrested. He is literally arrested. And we know, they chained up his hands, took him like the way they would. And they were really weird. And I feel like, honestly, the soldiers from the start, like, knew that he was God that was very vulnerable, or whatever the word is, like they could do whatever they wanted to him. Because these same soldiers, I feel like, scourged him. So they take him to Pontius. They take him to, it's like a midnight trial, I believe. And they ask him, are you Jesus? Are you the King of Kings or something? And he's like, thou hast said it. Oh, they said, I adjure you by the living God that thou tellest if thou be Christ, the Son of God. And he's like, thou hast said it. Nevertheless, I say to you that you will see the Son of Man sitting upon the side of the Father's man, coming upon the clouds of heaven. And then the chief priest rents his garments, and he's like, he has blasphemed. Like, what further need have we of witnesses here? It was so stupid. And Jesus is like, he's like, what do you think? And they're all like, he's guilty of death. And then they like punched him and buffeted him, which just means you like punch him. They, spat on him and like just like horrible things. So then in the morning, and I like to think that, not like, but in the day before, that they put him in like a cell, like a jail cell. I don't see where else they put him. And they probably didn't give him food or water, which I've had experience with, but it's just like sort of like an isolation room, but like jail cell without food or water, and he's probably exhausted. Well, after that happens, the next morning, they bring him before Pilate, who's the governor of Judea. I forget, but he's the governor, Pontius Pilate, and they bring him out, and he's like, okay, what is this? And they try to explain to him that, they want Jesus dead. And Pilate goes to Jesus and he's like, privately, like, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus is like, yes, like, that's what my Father, I bear testimony to the truth and all this stuff. And it says in the Bible that he really wanted to free Jesus, but he didn't. So they had this prisoner, his name was Barabbas, and he was just a horrible murderer, just a horrible person. And Pilate used him. Well, it was like the day that they were like, who should we release? Like Barabbas or Jesus? Because they released a prisoner, which is really odd. They used to do that back in the day. So they release Barabbas because they're like, no, we want Barabbas over Jesus. And then he says, well, what do I do with Jesus that is called Christ? And they're like, crucify him. And he's like, why? What evil hath he done? And they're like, crucify him. And he had the choice to, take up whatever they were going to do against him because it was causing conflict. But he said, he took water and washed his hands, and he said, I am not guilty of this man's blood. Look unto you. And they're like, his blood be upon us and upon our children. And so they take Jesus, and it says, okay, so going back to like Jesus in a cell, he was like very broken mentally, physically, he got hit, like, yeah. So he goes to this pillar and they scourge him. Now, scourging is not just scratching. It is not just injuring. It is something that if you do it enough to a person, it could kill them. And so they take Jesus, chain him to the pillar or whatever, and they just start slashing him. Now, these are the same soldiers that, are gonna crown him with thorns. The ones that I was saying that didn't like care, they thought this was like a game because he's so vulnerable or whatever. Like we can just do whatever we want to him. Scourge him, and he's just bleeding. They say the Blessed Mother like helped clean up his blood. Like, oh my gosh. So then after Pilate scourges him, he delivers him up after he scourges him, which he's still alive, and he delivers him up to crucify him. Well, this next part kills me, literally. So like it says, then the soldiers took Jesus into the hall, and gathering unto him the whole band, they stripped him and put on a scarlet or purple garment, and they plaiting a crown of thorns. Okay, so these are not little dinky thorns. These were like this long. And they pushed it into his head, and he was just like, mocked. And they mocked him, and they said, "Hail, King of the Jews," and they spat upon him, and they took the reed that they put him stand for scepter, hit his head, and then they took off the garment from him, which probably hurt really bad, and they took him away to crucify him. In the midst of this, they're taking him, so he's carrying his cross, and they found a man of Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to take up his cross. And then after they crucified him, they, gathered, or, what's it called? Like gambled with his garments, cast lots, all that stuff, and sat and watched him. And Jesus, okay, so from the cross, there is so much pain. Okay, if you think being on a cross is like a horizontal thing, it isn't. It's like this. And every breath he took, he would have been dead if he didn't force himself to his heart to beat and his breath to come back up into his chest, because you're just hanging. So it's just, and people are below like saying like, "Thou destroys the temple of God in 3 days," and destroys the temple of God, and in 3 days to rebuild it. Save thine own self. If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross. And imagine hearing that when you're like in intense pain. So I just love God, and I love talking about this. So after that, he, it's like the 9th hour, and he's just had it. Obviously, he's gone through a lot of stuff, and he's just like, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And people are like, he calls Elias. I don't know why they would say that, but probably because it's like Ela Saba. I forget what it is in Aramaic. And then he says, oh my gosh. I think he says it is consummated, or it is finished. Now, this is the last word and the last thing of Jesus. So like, he's like, it is finished. And he bowed his head and he died. And it just shows that the last words he said was, "It is finished." Like, imagine you're like, "I'm going to die after this." It is so intense. And then he just lays his head down and he dies. So actually, yeah, he died. I'm thinking like he died. And it's just so sad because he really died, and he was born as a baby to die. And so I just want you to like realize today that God really loves you. It's not just something like lovey-dovey or whatever. He really loves you. And if you think for 1 second that God was on that cross thinking like, "Oh yeah, I'm bypassing that." Like, he was in pain. He knows your pain. He totally loves us, guys. And yeah. So I would encourage you today to just bask in God's love and just realize that, He loves you. I have to go pretty soon because I got to make dinner. It's late here. But yeah. And also, guys, we got snow. It was really nice. It was really nice, but I don't like snow on the road, so I don't know what I think about that. Happy Sunday. Do something Sunday fun day. And I will see you next time. God bless. Enjoy your night.